All right, buckle up, everyone, because today we're diving deep into French realism.
Ooh, yeah, and get ready to say goodbye to those rose-colored glasses.
Because we're about to explore a literary movement that wasn't afraid to get down and dirty.
Like, really dirty.
Think of it as the 19th century's version of, like, a super unfiltered reality show.
No filters, just straight up nitty-gritty.
We're talking about the authors who decided to ditch the romanticized ideals.
And instead, they just went all in on showing the real struggles of everyday life.
The anxieties, the heartbreaks, the hypocrisy.
Well, all the stuff that makes us human, basically.
We're going to focus on three of the biggest names in French realism.
The heavy hitters, you could say.
Balzac, Flaubert, and Zola.
Yeah, these guys were like the rock stars of their time.
But instead of shredding guitars, they were crafting these incredibly detailed and often kind of depressing masterpieces.
Well, I mean, they were reflecting the world around them, right?
It honestly wasn't all sunshine and roses.
But you know what? Sometimes you gotta acknowledge the darkness to appreciate the light.
It's so true. And speaking of darkness, let's start with Honoré de Balzac.
The guy was a bit of a literary overachiever, if you ask me.
Just a bit. This is the man who attempted to write a whole series called The Human Comedy.
Ah, yes, the human card.
Which was basically his ridiculously ambitious project to portray.
Like all of French society.
And he meant all of it.
Every nook and cranny.
Balzac wanted to capture the entire spectrum of human experience.
From the highest social circles to the depths of poverty.
And he did it through a series of interconnected novels and stories.
Over 90 of them, in fact.
90. It's mind-boggling.
It really is. And what's even more impressive is the level of detail he went into.
He was obsessed with detail, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Obsessed is an understatement, I think.
It's like he wanted to document every single thing, every little detail.
Like he was afraid he would miss something.
It's almost like how we overthink things today, you know?
Totally. I can totally see Balzac agonizing over which Instagram filter would best capture a character's mood.
Or like writing a whole chapter about someone stressing over a text message.
Oh my God, that's so Balzac.
Right, he would have been all over that.
So Balzac was all about the details and painting this vast panorama of society.
But he wasn't afraid to show the ugliness, the hypocrisy.
He was a master of social critique.
But let's move on to another giant of French realism.
Gustave Flaubert.
The author of Madame Bovary.
A novel so scandalous
that it actually landed him in court.
Can you imagine?
Like getting in trouble for writing a book.
Well, Madame Bovary was pretty groundbreaking for its time.
It follows the story of Emma Bovary.
This woman who's trapped in a really boring marriage.
And a really stifling provincial life.
She's just craving passion and excitement, you know?
But she's stuck in this, like, utterly mundane world.
And this leads her down a path of, let's just say, questionable choices.
Yeah, she ends up having a series of affairs.
Which at the time was a pretty taboo subject.
Especially for a female character.
Right, like female desire was not something people openly talked about.
So Flaubert really pushed the boundaries with this book.
He wasn't afraid to challenge social norms.
And to portray the consequences of those norms.
Emma's story is ultimately a tragedy.
But it's also a powerful critique of the limitations placed on women in that era.
It really makes you think about how much society has or hasn't changed since then, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of pushing boundaries, our next author took realism to a whole new level.
Émile Zola.
The champion of naturalism.
Which is basically like realism on steroids.
Even grittier, even more raw.
Zola wasn't just interested in depicting reality.
He wanted to expose the forces, the social and environmental forces that shape our lives.
And he did that masterfully in his novel Germinal.
Which delves into the brutal realities of coal mining life.
It's not an easy read.
But it's a powerful one.
Zola doesn't shy away from the harsh conditions.
The poverty, the dangers, the struggles these miners face.
And he does it all with this incredible sense of empathy and urgency.
It's like he's saying, look, this is happening, we can't ignore it.
Literature as a tool for social change.
Right. He wasn't just writing for entertainment.
He wanted to spark a conversation, to make people think critically about the world around them.
So we've got Balzac, meticulously capturing the details of society.
Flaubert, dissecting social norms and their consequences.
And Zola, using his writing to fight for social justice.
Three very different authors.
But all united by this desire to show the world as it really is.
To expose the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And that's really the essence of French realism, isn't it?
It's about confronting uncomfortable truths.
about acknowledging the complexities of human nature.
And about using literature as a tool to understand and maybe even change the world around us.
So maybe our social media feeds, with all their filters and curated perfection,
Are kind of like the opposite of what these French realists were trying to do.
they wanted to strip away the artifice to show us the real, unfiltered truth.
And maybe, just maybe, that's something we could all benefit from today.
Food for thought.
Exactly.
So if you're looking for a literary experience that will challenge your assumptions and leave you thinking deeply about the world,
I highly recommend checking out some French realism.
Balzac, Flaubert,
Yes.
Zola,
They might not be the cheeriest bunch,
but their works are powerful, thought-provoking.
and ultimately timeless.
So dive in and see what you discover.
You might be surprised.
Happy reading, everyone!
See ya!